Those who rejected the prophets did so because they could not see beyond the human body. Confined to the corporeal realm, they demanded extraordinary physical signs while ignoring the inner light that defines the perfect man. The same veil covered the Ummah when they rejected the Imam. They did not lose the Qur'an, they lost the sight to understand the Qur'an. They clung to the outward form while abandoning the inward reality, and the result was fragmentation, literalism, and the disappearance of esoteric understanding in the form of light. When the guide is rejected, the path remains, but it becomes hidden from the eyes that refuse to see. They spend the rest of their lives in spiritual darkness. The Quran calls the Prophet a radiant lamp, Quran 33:46, showing that his very personality, not just his message, was a source of light. People received the first light of religion through him, through his presence, ethics, mercy, and wisdom. This proves that the corporeal form of the true guide is included in the light, because the illumination of ethics, soul, and intellect is impossible without the living person who carries it. Yet throughout history, people have confused human form with ordinary humanity. They saw the prophets and imams as men like us and rejected them because their bodies looked normal. They expected extraordinary physical features, not realizing that the miracle is not in the form but in the personality, the inner light, the spiritual authority, the perfected intellect, the divine mercy. Human form is simply the biological body, shared by all humans. Personality of the perfect man is the living light of God, expressed through character, wisdom, purity, and guidance. Those who remain confined to the corporeal realm judge only by the outer form. They cannot perceive the inner radiance that distinguishes the guide from ordinary people. This is why the Ummah, when it rejected the Imam, did not lose the Quran, it lost the light of the Quran. They kept the outward form but abandoned the inward reality. The tragedy of the Ummah was never that the lamp went out, for the lamp lit by God remains eternally bright. The tragedy is that the Ummah, through ignorance and the weakness of their earthly intellect, turned away from its brilliance. They did not extinguish the light, they simply walked out of its glow through their ignorance. They grasped their own rope of illiteracy instead of God's rope, Quran 3:103, preferring their own dim reasoning over the divine light appointed to guide them. The Quran says in 36:12, "And we have encompassed everything in the manifest Imam." That is, God enfolds the universe in the form of spiritual particles in the living and present Imam and also unfolds his guidance through him in the form of light. Quran 78:29 says, "And everything is encompassed in the living Kitab." Those who work without knowledge, who reject the true guide, and who act from ignorance rather than wisdom are like the Gog and Magog, who could not understand any word. Quran 18:93-94. Their mischief arises from the same blindness described in Quran 2:11. They claim reform while spreading corruption. In choosing their own will over God's will, they did not darken the lamp, they darkened their own hearts. The Prophet's mercy and light continued in the Imam, but those who abandoned the divinely appointed guide fell into deeper darkness, not because the light failed, but because they stepped out of it and have remained for 1400 years. The Quran says, "Some faces on that day will be resplendent, looking toward their Lord." 75:22-23. Quran 75:24 says, "Some faces on that day will be despondent, they will be veiled from the divine vision and replaced with their own regret. This radiant vision is not abstract. It is the blessed vision of the Prophet and the Imam, for their obedience is God's obedience, their love is God's love, and their sacred vision is the vision of God. As the Prophet said, "He who has seen me has indeed seen God." But the great diversion was a spiritual turning. It was the moment when the Ummah, through ignorance and desire, replaced the divine light with their own limited intellect. God had prepared a path of salvation, rooted in continuous guidance through the living light of the Imam, yet the people chose worldly gain over eternal truth. In doing so, they did not extinguish the lamp, for the lamp lit by God never goes out. They simply walked away from its brilliance. By abandoning the divinely appointed guide, they severed themselves from the very source of illumination, the source of recognition, the source of divine vision. And in that turning, they lost the very purpose for which every soul came into this world, the chance to behold the light of God through His chosen ones and the given knowledge and wisdom which they embodied. Those who accept only the outward Sharia without the knowledge of Taweel find the gate of paradise closed, for every law of the prophets is veiled in allegory. God says those who feared their Lord will be driven to paradise until when they reach it, its gates are opened. Qur'ān 39:73. The gates open only when the inner meaning is unlocked. Without Taweel, the gates remain shut, and when the gate of paradise is closed, the gate of hell inevitably opens. Qur'ān 39:71. The opener of the gate is the Wali, the Imam, the Lord of Taweel, in every age. Further, Qur'ān 39:71 says, "Did not the messengers come to you from yourselves, reciting to you the verses of your Lord and warning you of the meeting of this day of yours?" They will reply, "Yes, the messengers did come to us, but the unbelievers who hide the truth were doomed to face the torment." Thus, the gate of paradise is the Prophet, and the opener of the gate of paradise for all the faithful is the Imam of the time. The consequences of rejecting this inner gate echo through history. A community that abandons its lamp walks in darkness, not because the lamp was taken away, but because it was rejected. The divine light remains eternal and unextinguished, waiting for those who turn toward it. But those who cling only to the outward form, without the inner meaning, sever themselves from the very source of illumination. Only those who seek the appointed guide, the one who opens the gate of meaning, can be brought from darkness into light. Those who turn away lose not only understanding, but the very purpose for which the soul came into this world, the chance to behold the divine vision through the Prophet and the Imam, the living gates of paradise. The Qur'an teaches that the greatest veil is not over the eyes, but over the insight that should lie behind them. A community may hold the scripture in its hands, recite its verses with precision, and preserve its outward form with devotion, yet remain blind to the world of meanings that the Qur'an itself calls clear signs in the breasts of those given knowledge. Qur'an 29:49. The tragedy of rejecting the living guide is not merely the loss of leadership. It is the loss of the inner science that turns verses into vision and recitation into recognition. For the Qur'an is not a book that yields its treasures to the surface reader. Its parables are keys, its symbols are doors, and its doors open only to those who approach with the humility to be taught. When the Ummah turned away from the Imam, it unknowingly turned away from the very organ of understanding, the heart that God illuminates with wisdom. Without that heart, the verses remain like stars seen from a distance, beautiful but unreachable, their warmth unfelt. The deeper wisdom of revelation is that divine light is not merely something to be believed in, it is something to be received, and reception requires alignment. Just as the sun cannot be blamed when a man hides in a cave, the divine lamp cannot be blamed when hearts turn away. The Qur'an calls this a blindness of the heart, Qur'an 22:46, a condition in which the outer eye sees the form of religion while the inner eye loses the meaning. Yet the Qur'an also teaches that God never withdraws his mercy. The lamp continues to shine, the gate remains present, and the path is never erased. What is required is not a new revelation, but a new readiness, a willingness to see beyond the body, beyond the letter, beyond the inherited assumptions that have hardened into walls. When this readiness awakens, the same verses that once seemed silent begin to speak, and the same Imam who was once ignored becomes the horizon of understanding. Thus, the journey of these scenes reveals a truth that lies at the heart of the Qur'an's esoteric wisdom. The light of guidance never disappears, only the capacity to perceive it does. And when that capacity is restored, the Qur'an becomes what it was always meant to be, a living universe of meanings, illuminated by the one whom God has appointed as its key.